Hey guys, I wanted to do an advanced strategy video, particularly on positioning. Positioning is one of those things that I feel like so many times teams will simply just say, oh, you have bad positioning, but they don't actually give any advice on how to fix positioning. There are multiple ways to position for team fights, and it purely depends on your team comp and the enemy team comp, but there's one particular position that I like more so than most other forms. And I'll talk about that a little bit further in this video, but as we start off with this video, there is a bit of a sponsor. In this case, it is a Heroes of the Storm sponsor, and it's something that I've participated in quite a bit, and that is Chili Mountain. Chili Mountain is an organization that runs events for Heroes of the Storm, and these events are pretty awesome. They have events that range for all levels of play and in every single region. They're one of the few organizations that actually runs events in every region, where Heroes Hearth only really runs North America, Heroes Lounge doesn't do a lot in North America, NGS is only North America. Chili Mountain does North America, Europe, and they're one of the few organizations that does events at all in Korea, but they also have prized events for Korean teams. So in this case, we're going to be watching an event. A lot of people told me to watch these games because they thought these teams were awesome, and they are two awesome Korean teams that are facing against each other in the Chili Mountain event. So if you guys want to learn more about Chili Mountain, check out down below. Feel free to check out their website. I highly recommend hopping in their Discord and also following them on social media and participating in these events. At the very least, watch them because it's some of the highest levels of play you're going to be able to see. Where CCL, they take kind of the best player and they're all drafted, so you might have the 5 best players split between 5 different teams. On this one, you might have 5 amazing players on one team and 5 amazing players on another team absolutely duking it out because they're not drafted like that. They're pulled in together. So that's a great part about this in Chili Mountain, is you could have some of these amazing teams face each other, which is why we have some awesome games from them. With that being said, though, make sure to check them out. All those will be in the description down below. Thank you for doing all of that. I don't know, this is kind of weird. I did a lot of random sponsorships in September, so I appreciate you guys for hanging out through that. It's not going to be a regular occurrence, but I did really want to help out Chili Mountain, so we did talk about that. Also, I've casted with them, and I'm a caster for Chili Mountain, so it's not really that much of a sponsorship, honestly. It's kind of more of a partner. It's a long story. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to ramble forever. So I want to talk about positioning, but I actually want to fast forward a little bit, because where the positioning really appears is when these objectives show up. So when there's team fights, and I'll just have this play out, but when there's team fights, there are generally 2 positions that people go in. One is front to back, and let me increase the font size really quick. Okay. So front to back is an idea where you are going to have your team, and feel free to watch all of this, but I'm just going to draw it out while we're going. Front to back is where you'll have your front line here, and then it kind of goes in like a triangle like this. And you'll have maybe like your closer DPS in the middle, you'll have your bruiser and your tank up front, and then you'll have like your healer and your furthest range DPS in the back. And the way front to back works is that your team is going to try to push at the enemy front line and kill their front line first, and then move in and kill their back line after killing their front line. You build a front to back composition around doing a lot of damage to front line. And on the other direction, the enemies beat a front to back comp, and you can beat it in the same direction by killing the front line and going further into the back line. But what I want to share really quick is the positioning that I actually prefer, which is a crescent moon. So I'm actually going to pause, and I'm going to go back just a tad. So right here is exactly what I want to show you guys. So what I prefer is what's called a crescent moon. You take your tank and you put your tank here. Let's assume that Diablo's right here. The rest of your team is going to be in kind of a half circle or a crescent moon shape around the target, where usually you will have a bruiser at the furthest forward position on the crescent moon, and the other crescent moon kind of breaks off a little bit on this side, and you'll usually either have your auto attacker or a flanking mage on this side, followed up by your healer, and your auto attacker will be somewhere in the middle of this crescent moon. I love this position because if Chromie ever aims at just Diablo and he dodges, it doesn't immediately hit someone else. But let's say that Chromie was right here and she threw her abilities, and let's say that someone here dodged, it would still hit 1 to 2 more people if you're in this position. So I never like fighting in a cluster. I like spreading my team out into a crescent moon, where the range of the crescent moon from the tank's position to the range is still within the range of all of the abilities of the heroes that are in that crescent moon. So learning this positioning is one of the most important things teams can do, and this is definitely an advanced strategy because these 2 positions will adjust based on the team comps. There are several other forms of positioning, but I always want to recommend that when positioning, the first thing that you should be trying to do is spread your team out, and then yet still having them all within the range of the enemy team. The second thing that you need to do is force the enemy into clustered positions like this. And this is where it's going to get very advanced. Your tank is going to need to hold his ground when he's in a position that the enemies have to be in these clustered positions. And your team needs to punish the enemies while they're in those positions so they can't step up. And this is the advanced part of it, is you have to do that. If you're not pressuring them when they're in a choke point, then they're going to just push forward and that choke point is going to be ruined. If they are getting pressured, then they're going to step back and you guys win the objective. And I want you guys to see that the red Korean team does this on almost every single objective. They force the enemies into a choke point, they spread out, and they'll have Raynor win the objective, while they'll have both Yrel as well as Junkrat throw so much damage in the choke point that the blue team has to step back, and they do this every time. They don't necessarily actually win any major team fight this game. They win purely off of better positioning throughout this entire game, which is something that you guys can learn, especially the teams. When I'm coaching teams that are usually Div A or Div B, this is something that they tend to struggle with. They've got their team comps down, they've got their strategies down, but they tend to struggle with positioning because they don't know what good positioning looks like. Good positioning, you can see once again, even after this fight started, back into a choke point for blue team, and red team spread out. Red team pushes all of blue team away, wins the objective, and they don't even really need to engage anymore. I'm going to fast forward through this first objective as we start approaching the next objective, because ultimately this is how they win every single time, and I want to break down their positioning because that is all that they use here. They're not actually running a team comp that leads to really powerful kills. As far as a blow-up composition, I actually prefer blue team's team comp. However, for a map like Inferno Shrines, you don't need to actually win team fights. You just need to win the objective. And the objective's on a pseudo timer because there's only 40 skeletal defenders you need to defeat. So for Sky Temple, for this map, for Volskaya, you don't necessarily need to lead to kills. You can simply zone people off of points with really good positioning. And this is something that I want to make another advanced strategy video about, is team comps. How to make a 1-2 punch team comp and when you actually need a 1-2 punch team comp. I talked about blow up comps, and those are still something that everyone is going to do, stall comps, things like that, but there's so much more to it than just that, and I wanted to talk about how higher level teams should be drafting when you're in a coordinated environment. Once again, you see blue team ends up getting clustered again, red team ends up spreading out. Part of that is potentially because of the healer that they have. Remember, spreading out is not always a good thing. Malfurion allows teams to spread out a little bit more, where Anduin wants teams to be a little bit closer together. But keep that in mind that there's times for both of those. You can communicate when Anduin's about to do a big heal, and then you can still have good positioning and not have to worry about it. Where the same thing's true with Malfurion. Tranquility, you can communicate when you need your team to group up together and when your team's allowed to spread. It's all communication, which is why these are advanced strategies. They're not things that I can show you guys this video all day long in Storm League, and you're not going to be able to convince your team to do this correctly. But I've been making most of my videos lately for those in Storm League. I've made videos on how to carry in low ranks. I've made videos on individual hero guides to improve your play on those heroes and how that affects Storm League. But I have been lacking in the competitive environment for a little while, which is what people originally started watching my videos for. Is when I was an analyst for HGC and an analyst for HGC teams, I was making video content more on the advanced side of things. Combos, very advanced combos on specific heroes, like my Stukov combos. As well as advanced strategies like anchoring bushes and everything like that. I mean, that's not really an advanced strategy, but you get the point. So I really wanted to come back and talk about advanced positioning when it comes to these teams. So once again, what do you see? You see Diablo stepping up, but he doesn't want to get thrown and instantly killed. But do you see how much pressure is applied to keep them in this choke point, right? Junkrat's applying a lot of pressure. Diablo goes kind of from a flank here because he wants to keep him on this choke, and I love this strat, and this requires so much communication, and it requires a little bit of luck. But look at how their team has moved. Diablo moved up in this direction, Yrel moved up in this direction, and then you have Raynor, who's just going to get this objective over here. So I'll cover this with orange, as this is just a neutral thing that's happening. And then you have both Junkrat and Malfurion who are pressuring in this direction. This is giving blue team only this tiny area to actually use during this fight, which is a really rough area. And the greatest part about this is watch what red team does in this position. They don't force this fight because Raynor's going to win this objective for them. They want to keep blue team in here as long as possible and just poke away at their health bars and try to hold off as long as possible. And I love this particular fight right here because of how it plays out. Blue team decides they want to heavily engage onto Diablo. So they overcommit into taking out Diablo and they throw a lot of abilities. Diablo flips people around, stays alive through using Tranquility almost the entire fight. Their team ends up trading 1-for-1. Diablo comes back because he does have souls, but Yrel's back to zoning out everyone while they win the rest of this objective. So the enemies engaged on them. Everyone stopped what they were doing and fought the enemies while they were in that major choke point. So they spent the first half of that team fight just keeping the enemy in a choke point. And then when the enemies engaged and used a ton of abilities that Diablo soaked up with Soul Shield, they were able to counter-engage on their terms, win the objective, and also come out favorably in that team fight. And this is how they're winning, by utilizing positioning only. So once again, we're going to fast forward up until the next fight. And this next fight is going to be the last one that I talk about positioning. But that's the thing about positioning, is it's not always, oh, well, you should have the tank should be in front of everyone. It's not always that simple. Front to back team comps work really well if your whole team's drafted for it and the enemy team is not drafted for it. But outside of that, front to back team comps could be suicide, especially against high CC teams. Individual positioning is something that I'll make other videos about. This is team positioning. So I'm not going to talk about how the Chromium ends up dying there, or anyone else that gets picked. I want to specifically talk about team positioning and what you should be doing. But again, that Crescent Moon is my favorite position. It's difficult for some healers like Lucio, but most other healers can handle a Crescent Moon position really well and still keep everyone topped off. You do lose out on some of the piercing darts if you're playing Ana, but at the same time, it is also one of the safest positions for Ana to be in. But if you are playing an Ana comp and the enemies don't have any dive, a front-to-back team comp works really well with Ana. So that's something that you guys can plan out. And remember, it does matter on your team comps. This is something that I want your team's drafter to actually talk about a little bit and go, what kind of positioning do we want? Well, I've only mentioned 2. There are all sorts of shapes you can play out in team fights, and it also is different on different maps. There was an old team comp that was used a lot, which was kind of a protect the carry comp, where instead of everyone going in a crescent moon where the tank's out like this, instead the tank will be here and you guys kind of form like a diamond around a carry. So you'll have your healer back here, you'll have your carry here, and you'll have 2 other people that are just ready to knock people back or do whatever they can to protect the carry. So it kind of ends up looking a little bit like a diamond shape. I'm derping out on the diamond, but it looks a little bit like a diamond shape. That was very common with like hammer combos compositions, which are still very good. If you ban Crummy and pick Hammer on a standstill map that people have to fight on, you can win a lot by running a comp like this. The downside is that you're gonna take a lot of hits that everyone on your team is gonna take. So you need to make sure that the people that are on the edges of the pyramid are ready. The tank's ready to step forward. The top is ready to step up, and you kind of play this out where. Let's say that this is like a Sergeant Hammer. This is your Zul'jin or whatever you're trying to protect. Your tank's here. You have a damage here. You have a healer here, and you have a damage here. You guys should be able to play it out further if you have to. So these can run in any of these directions. Your tank can run in any of these directions, and your healer can run in any of these directions. So the outer size of the positioning is actually this big. And then you only get close when you need to get close. You get far when you need to get far. And that is a really powerful positioning if you want to protect the carry in a composition like that. So get creative with your positioning, but the goal about positioning is have a plan ahead of time. So that when your team doesn't get in a fight, you just go, oh, we lost because of bad positioning. Because most of the time when I ask teams, I say, okay, well, your shot caller said that you lost because of bad positioning. What was your bad positioning there? And I'll ask the damage dealers, and they're like, well, I don't know. Maybe I stepped up too far. I'm like, then where should you have been? And they're like, I don't know. So instead of telling people what they are doing wrong, I like to tell people what they should be doing. You can still tell people what they're doing wrong after they know where they should be. Like knowing where not to be is kind of basic knowledge. You die, you're like, I guess I shouldn't have been that close. But knowing where to be is where you guys should have a strategy and a plan. And it might be something where you guys pull up a map like this and you guys talk about it a little bit. Honestly, go into just start a game against bots and have your whole team go into positions around every map and go, where should we be positioned on this map to get the most value? Find the team comps that you guys are bringing to these maps and then adjust based off of that. And come up with not only the team comp that you want for the map, but the positioning that you want for the team comp for every position on that map, every objective position on that map. If you guys can do that, you're going to win a significantly more amount of your games as a competitive team than if you don't do that. I'm just going to go through the last team fight right here to talk one more time about how red team positions. But outside of that, I'm going to cut this video a little short because I don't want it to be like a 30-minute video. Right here, once again, you're going to see Diablo's going to push up here to keep them in the choke point from coming down. Yrel is going to push up here so that they can't move forward. And then Rainer's going to just win this objective while Junkrat's just going to get a bunch of poke, forcing them to stay in that position. They do this same strategy every single time. And they will try to keep them in that choke point. So right here, once again, they overcommit onto taking out this Diablo. He gets thrown. He's going to pop his spell shield. You see that he pops the spell shield, and they counter-engage. The Yrel goes in, and now that they're all caught in these different areas, they get absolutely destroyed. And then they can go back and win the objective since they're already at 27 out of 40. And once again, it's a simple positioning thing. It's different on every map and comp, but I want you guys to take the team comp that you're going to be bringing to maps, and you should always have, for every map, you should have 2 to 3 team comps that are really strong on that map, and go for that. It doesn't even need to be gimmicky, just something that works for that map. That way you're not just playing team comps that are good, you're playing team comps that are good on that map. Then you find the positioning that's good for that team comp on that map for every objective point, and potentially even for certain camp points. You don't need to play to a T to those points. Just use it as basic guidelines of, this was our plan, and this is going to be easier to peel if the enemy's engaged, since we know where everyone is, where they should be, and where they can go to escape. And if you plan out your escape strategies for every positioning as well, even more power to you, because then you'll have an answer to every situation that could potentially happen before you even get to any of these situations. And this is the advanced guide on team positioning. I do want to say one more time about the sponsor, Chili Mountain. Make sure to check them out. Follow their Twitch, follow their Twitter, and make sure to hop in their Discord. Whether or not you just like watching the competitive scene, or if you want to participate in the competitive scene, Chili Mountain has some awesome events. This particular game was streamed as a Korean-only event through Chili Mountain. They have some awesome casters. I've casted for him, Murda's casted for him, Baja's casted for him, Tetcher. They've got some awesome groups, so make sure to check them out in the description down below. And thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to check out my other videos. I will be bringing out some more advanced strategy guides throughout this month and the next couple months as we start seeing some more competitive play show up, and the level, or the bar, continues to rise for all of these teams. Thank you guys so much for watching, and feel free to check out my other videos.